Hey everyone, we're just waiting for everybody to join in. Seems like we have a quorum and we can start today's meeting. So first housekeeping, welcome to the working group LTS meeting. This meeting is getting recorded and will be posted on YouTube. So be mindful of what you share. And we follow the CNCF guidelines. So please be awesome to everyone. That's it from me. The first thing, can anyone be my note taker? Okay, thanks, Nick. Right, thanks for volunteering. I'm going to paste the meeting notes talk in the chat. Please add yourself as an attendee there. And we could start with today's agenda. I think last week we had the stable dev proposal from Tim, and this week, and Lubomir had shared his proposal, so we should probably discuss that. And I brought, and so I see Lubomir in here. Do you want to take over?
Sure. Can I share my screen?
Yep, go ahead. How do I enable you? Yeah, you can share the screen.
Can you see it?
Yeah, I see a GitHub page. A pull
Okay.
request. Yeah.
Let me open the document quickly.
It's linked, yeah.
So it's a rather big document. So I was wondering how should I present this. So it's not going to be a presentation. It's going to be more of a going through the sections of the document. So basically, in the introduction, I explain what the problem is, like what we are doing currently and what potentially people want from an LTS release. In proposal, basically, I propose that I have an idea of one of the ways to do LTS in Kubernetes. This document is like basically outlining this idea. There are probably many ways to do releases, LTS release in Kubernetes, but this is like my personal opinion, strictly not dictated by my employer. So in timeline of an LTS release, I basically explain how we can achieve LTS with the current release cadence. And basically, I fix a period of 18 months as a proposal of how long an LTS release can be. And I also have this diagram that explains, like, for instance, 1.16 is going to be out of scope in 3 releases, but an LTS release can be out of scope for like 6 after 6 releases when the next LTS takes over. That's 1.21. Here are some details, like basically about the Git branches, basically how the non-LTS releases receive patches. You can check the details later. So this is a section I added today. Tim Pepper messaged me about this, like how a user is supposed to consume LTS artifacts, and basically added a paragraph here explaining that we should preserve the existing process as much as possible. And also, if there are improvements in the existing process, we should probably translate this to the LTS process as well. This again, proposal stuff only. So what is, how should users consume LTS patch releases? Basically, part of the message from Tim was also related to the fact, like to the topic of basically what should be the recommended process of LTS upgrades. So in this section, I cover, like, basically I recommend that you should update on every LTS patch release. But if you skip the LTS patch release, we kind of have to guarantee for you that by skipping LTS patch level upgrades, we guarantee for you that we are not going to break you. But if still this happens, we have to provide a stepping stone for you. So this is one of the tricky parts, the governance of an LTS release. Basically, I propose LTS branch managers that should be, currently, I believe we have 2 people. That's Tim Pepper and Alexandra, I forgot her last name, Malinovska, I think. But anyway, I propose here that we should have more people, like something like 4 branch managers, because first of all, it's important, and second of all, if one of them goes to vacation, we have to have an immediate backup, someone that can take over. Here is the list of roles, which is pretty much the same as the existing process. Security approval. Here I talk about basically that ideally all patches that go into the LTS branch should pass some sort of a security approval. I mean, if something is kind of minor, we should probably omit this part, but I make this, in this proposal, I make this as an essential part of the, basically, of merging a PR against an LTS branch. SIG owners. So my idea is that every LTS change should be maintained by a SIG. Because that this change, basically, if this change breaks later, if we find that there is a bug in this particular area of the code, the SIG has to be responsive immediately. So my idea is that we probably should get some signups from the SIGs, like who is our contact in a SIG that basically monitors the LTS branch. Because if a change is not maintained by a specific SIG, we have a problem where basically we don't have the contacts that we need. And I think that there should be some sort of a sign up from the side of the SIGs. So this is kind of, this is just a proposal stuff. I propose a GitHub label because currently we have the problem where if you're not a milestone maintainer, you basically do, help the community by doing issue triage. You cannot indicate that a certain ticket is going to be related to the LTS branch, to the LTS release. So basically, I'm proposing a new label called Area LTS. And the area label is a label that everybody can apply. This is basically the proposal for this label. In this section, I talk about the lifecycle of an LTS change. This is one of the controversial parts because we need to establish a process, basically write a bunch of documents, get the SIGs to comply with the process. We also have security committee compliance here. So basically, I think there's a diagram here. Yes. So the process is pretty straightforward. It's pretty much exactly the same as now, except the section on the right is slightly different. Like again, today SIGs approve, the SIG owners approve of a change. But then the difference here is that the security review that we nowadays lack, and it becomes a question whether we should have more security people that have the bandwidth for this. And I'm not sure, but this is something that I think it's ideally we should have a security review for all the patches that go into the LTS branch. And then, Jordan, do you have a question? I'm sorry, I thought that I saw a microphone on mute. Right, but this is pretty much the same process as before. And then an important part here is that the change should be maintained long-term by the SIGs. So basically, this is the part where the SIG should be responsive if something breaks related to this part of the code. Now, this is another controversial section. This is about definitions. And here, basically, we have some problems related to what changes we, like today, what changes we allow into the old branches. And we don't have a clear definition. I don't think this document in particular can define it very well, but at least I tried. So I defined something that is a critical bug. And this is the list of criteria for such a basically a critical bug. And we can discuss these. Basically, I think that if something does not follow this criteria, it should not be merged into the LTS branch. And again, possibly we can reuse this. If you have this process defined for LTS, we can also reuse it in, in the other branches. Or maybe the problem here is that we first have to define it into the regular branches, regular releases, and then we can use it in LTS. I'm not sure how to proceed here. Basically, what is a Kubernetes dependency? It is another difficult topic to discuss. So I break this down into build related, and we use Golang, Bazel, hack scripts, image files. So here I try to, next to each of the items, I try to basically outline whether this is something that should be more or less allowed to be backported into the old branch, into the LTS branch. And it's really hard because some SIGs might complain, hey, I want my change to be merged. We also might get an argument about whether a Bazel change is good to be backported. But I try to get some definitions here. Correlated, like again, we don't have even a good definition of what is core and what is not. I try to list, the CRI, CNI, CSI interfaces as core, etcd, core DNS, the DNS servers. Basically, I try to outline that most of these, we should allow them, but only like mostly for patch releases. If something is minor or if something receives a minor or a major bump, it probably needs more evaluation. Like we need to evaluate all the changes that went between our last version and the version we are trying to bump to. So it's, I think that in general, everything needs a detailed evaluation, but yeah. Test related, this is another complicated part. Like currently test infra, I try to explain that test infra does not have release branches. So if you make a modification in kubetest, by the way, is a tool that is used everywhere. If you make a modification in kubetest, you face a situation where this modification is going to apply to all the, basically all the branches in KK. So that's a problem. Maybe test infra now has to transition to having branches as well. I explained that end-to-end and unit tests should not be touched unless we are changing code that is affected by this test. And also the end-to-end testing frameworks probably should not be touched with general changes. Add-on related, here, this is another tricky subject. We have add-ons under the cluster folder. So basically what I'm trying to explain here that it's kind of the cluster directory. I see a lot of backports, like in every release I see backports. They might be good backports, but we need to establish whether we should allow them in LTS. And as an alternative, we might want to move cluster out of KK before we start with LTS. I think it feels to me like this is it's a bit of a blocker for long-term support. Upgrades between LTS releases. Here I explain basically how. Okay.
Hey, just want to remind you, I'm going to time box this with for about 20 minutes.
So I have 1 minute.
No, you have, so we started 5 minutes late, so you have 6 minutes.
Okay, it's fine. So basically, in this section, I explain how you should do LTS upgrades. The TLDR here is that you have to do incremental upgrades. I'm not sure the community consumers are going to be happy with this, but this is the only way we can support LTS upgrades. Upgrade test signal. Basically, we wrote a tool for kubeadm upgrades recently, and I give this as an example of how we can have test signal for LTS to the next LTS release. Test signal basically testing up full LTS upgrades. This tool already supports it, except that we don't have it yet because we don't have LTS. We don't have this as part of the project. Problems and mitigations, like another difficult section to cover. Basically, what is a dependency change? Whether we should basically everything needs evaluation. We need to evaluate if security fix in Golang we should backport. Is this security fix affecting us, or are we like bumping Golang for the sake of bumping it? And also, is this dependency pulling other dependencies like an entanglement? We also I cover here API changes. I'm not exactly an API expert, but I try to basically attempt to solve potential problems with API upgrades. I'm not going to cover the details here in this presentation. Basically, the end. This is the further considerations section. I try to explain that while consumers might want LTS, LTS should not be the ultimate goal of the project. And basically, I think that we should instead try to support seamless upgrades. And we don't want to fall into the basically what Ubuntu are doing. Ubuntu have a stable version, which is technically the LTS version. And the only stable versions are the LTS versions. If you ask people around, everybody uses LTS, and they basically upgrade between LTS versions. And that's a problem. I think we should strive to not make the Kubernetes LTS the only stable version of the project. So that's all.
Thanks, Lubomir. We have a few minutes for any questions anybody has.
Hey, this is Jordan. I was wondering where the 18-month proposal came from. I know we'd heard from some users that annual upgrade cycles were necessary in their environments, and so we had talked about like potentially supporting that by just extending to support 4 releases instead of 3, and not treat any particular release as special. I was wondering where the 18-month proposal came from.
Yes. So I don't think we have this in any of our products. So basically, I was looking for a number that, for the sake of writing the document, because we currently don't have any number. So what I basically did is I took the current support SKU of 3 months and I doubled it. So it resulted in 18 months. That's it. But again, my hope here is that once we have the survey results, maybe we can create a solid number that is going to work for everyone, which is kind of unlikely that it's going to work for everyone, but we have to settle on a number.
Yeah, but it would be helpful in the kind of evaluating cost benefit to understand who is an 18-month LTS process helping, and would those people be helped by a 12-month non-LTS process, which would basically give them, they could pick any release and stay on it for 12 months and then upgrade through supported releases to the newest release. One of the issues I see with this is that it leaves the upgrade path requiring someone to upgrade through unsupported releases. That seems pretty problematic.
Also, if Roger, you're speaking, you're on mute. Let me finish my point then. I mean, if you're upgrading from 1.11 to 1.14, then you actually have a problem that your compatibility of your objects or things that are running on it may not exactly work, and the upgrade may not be always clean. So you may have downtimes and unexpected scenarios.
Well, upgrading from one release to the next, like from 1.11 to 1.12 to 1.13 to 1.14, each of those steps is supported. But if this is proposing an LTS release of 18 months, if you upgrade from 1.15, I think the example goes from 1.15 to 1.21, right? Well, at the point where 1.21 is released, 1.16, 1.17, and 1.18 are no longer supported. And so to get from 1.15 to 1.21, you would have to install or upgrade your cluster from 1.16 to 1.17 to 1.18. That means you're upgrading to versions that may not have received security fixes, may have significant bugs that haven't gotten backported. So even if those security fixes and bugs did get backported to 1.15, going through 1.16, 1.17, 1.18 on the way to the next LTS release means that you could be regressing data loss and security fixes in the process of upgrading. That doesn't seem workable to me.
Yeah, but I don't see how we can perform the upgrade path in any other way. It's just the alternative is to make Kubernetes support direct 1.15 to 1.21 upgrade.
I mean, if you update annually, that means that you have to update. If you want to be in continuous support, you have to update the second we release it.
I think that's a good point, Roger. Once the LTS or yearly release is ending, I mean, if you have only 1 year of support, and when it ends, you don't have any support for that version. So you have to update like the next day. An overlap period of some sort would be useful.
Yeah, I think it would also be useful to give some time for the release to kind of bake in any issues or any unforeseen problems. It seems like a .0 upgrade for especially like an LTS might be a little dangerous initially.
Yeah, if you have a yearly cycle, even with the same mechanism that we have right now, and say we support a fourth release, moving to the next fourth release, you would either, so if you upgrade every year, you are going from the oldest release to the newest release, but the newest release is not out yet, so you don't have enough bugs. So even if you don't have an LTS release, the same problem exists. So there should be some kind of an overlap period, maybe a month or 2 or 3.
If we're talking about overlap periods of a month or 2, that seems a lot more tractable to think through the implications of and the process of. One thing I love about this document is it kind of tries to break down how intentional we need to be about backports and the different categories and how much attention we pay to that. I think that works really well with the issue Tim opened, wanting to be more disciplined in how we backport even to our existing release branches. So I think that whole section is great about categorizing and making sure we're not destabilizing old branches in our attempts to support them.
Yep, and I think the current cycle, the way we see 1.11 jobs still running, I mean, I'm supposed to take it out tomorrow. I see that there is a lot of overlap period where 1.11 was already out of support long ago. So I would have to stop the discussion on this because we want to get to the next agenda item, but the document is open and please feel free to share your comments there. I'm gonna do that. I have a couple of comments also on 6-month timely release, which creates 5 releases at a time. I'll push that to later. I think I've added the next item on the agenda. Thanks, Lubomir, for the proposal. Yep. The upgrades, I think this question started when I was trying to understand how the upgrades were currently designed in testing. I mean, we have 2 to 3 different models of upgrades that we are doing. there is, I think the kubeadm upgrades are now kind based, and there is a GCE downgrade upgrade scripts which are non-kubeadm based. They use still this kubup. And I had a question about so the GCE based upgrades actually use a very old version of HCD. If you look at this issue opened, I'm going to share my screen just to discuss. So this particular issue is pretty old, October 3rd, 2018, and we still use version 1.8 compatible version of HCD. This is 3.0.17. The official documentation of Kubernetes says that we support 3.2.10 minimum version on all the Kubernetes releases. So there is a conversation here about asking what exactly should we be supporting. One of my suggestions was to start using, when you're doing upgrades from X to Y version, use the minimum, install the minimum version, so you don't have to test, so you don't have to upgrade HCD or downgrade HCD. Instead of pinning the HCD version to a specific version, to automatically figure that out. But I wanted to understand, because I think there are multiple people here who understand how kubeadm upgrades happen today and how GCE upgrades happen today. If someone has information on them, they could educate us.
So the problem of using HCD 1.8 is it's a generic problem. It's not only LTS. It has to be solved.
No, it's not an LTS problem, but we have a couple of on the project board, we have a couple of issues that Jordan had filed about, defining what is our current support SKU based for upgrades based on dependencies, etc. So I was trying to dig in, saying that, okay, we are testing very old version of HCD in one particular suite, and we are testing a different version of HCD in a different particular suite. Exactly what's the design, and how are we thinking, not just from perspective of LTS. Even if you're thinking LTS, we have to think about similar problems when LTS would happen. So the question is just to understand how kubeadm, say, Lubomir, if you could let us know about how kind is doing. Does it pin a HCD version, or how do you do upgrades today?
So kind is just a node deployer. The nodes themselves are managed by kubeadm. And kubeadm currently uses the version of HCD that is bound in KK. So we basically have a constant that is fixed for the current release, and we use this version of HCD for the version of kubeadm. We have a little SKU there that we support. And when we perform an upgrade, you have to download the new kubeadm binary that has a new constant. So basically we create a new manifest file, check a diff between the old and the new one, and perform an upgrade if we want to.
Okay. I think the GCE tests actually avoid doing that. They don't do any upgrades for HCD. They pin it to the lower version and skip upgrades for both upgrades and downgrades. So they avoid HCD upgrades. So that's the difference. Thanks for letting me know. I'll probably update the PR with the issue there and discuss that. So yeah, that's the only thing I wanted to bring on upgrades. I'm also trying to see, create a design doc, not a design doc, but actually state of the upgrades doc that says this is how we are doing upgrades today, and this is how we can promise the upgrades to work, at least based on how we are testing it today. And that would give us a path on saying, okay, these are the gaps and we need to put them, irrespective of whether LTS is, irrespective of whether we want to change the cadence or not, especially for current cadence. How are we testing it? So go ahead.
Quick question. Have you checked what the downgrade jobs are doing in terms of LTD? Because to my knowledge, downgrades of LTD are currently not supported.
Not supported, and that's exactly the reason. If you look at the issue I shared and I opened the first comment, there is that because you cannot support downgrades, we pin the HCD to a lower version of the HCD. So if you have two versions of Kubernetes, you're going from X to Y. You find out which is the lower version of Kubernetes and use the etcd version there. But what they did was, instead of choosing the lower version, what they did was they pinned it to a very old version of etcd, which is 1.8 compatible version, that is 3.0.17, and we haven't changed it ever since. So that is something that is something that is broken, and that's what I'm asking to change in the test framework in that issue.
Quite frankly, I'm not sure how it even works with a new version of Kubernetes, how it works with that old version of etcd.
Agreed, it does not. And that's one of the ways we've also figured it out, that the latest downgrades tests and upgrade tests failed because the new options were added and Kubernetes was using something newer, and that did not work, basically. I'll move on to the next one, which is interesting. And can you still see my screen? Am I still sharing it? Yep.
Mhm.
If the doc is not shared, let me know. I may not have remembered, but I'm working on the survey results and creating charts and etc. This is still work in progress, and there are various perspectives we need to look at this data from, and also take it with a pinch of salt that, hey, this could have bias in it. So I wanted to give a prelim of what I already have finished, and during the deep dive of working group at KubeCon, I'll provide more slides. I'm not going to KubeCon, but I'll hand it over to Tim to present this. So just for getting this recording and everybody who's listening later into the same page, we had a goal when we started the survey. We wanted to make sure that the working group is getting the consumer, the customer, and the ecosystem's opinion and experience on the current support cadence that we have. We created a document that's linked here, which contains a bunch of questions that we wanted to ask the community, and as a part of a survey. And this was a 3-month period, and we decided to float a survey that lived for 2 months and few days. We call it as Kubernetes Support Survey or Kubernetes LTS Working Group LTS Survey. So the goal was to get the feedback and information about what kind of challenges the stakeholders were facing. And this was communicated also in the survey as a goal, so that users know why we are doing this. The response was phenomenal. I heard from PM to different projects that this was like the highest number of response we have seen from the community, and that is great to know. We had about 334 completions, and the SurveyMonkey tool says it's about 600 responses, but I've seen that about 148 responses never had even answer to the first question. So they probably were attempts that people started the survey and then they could not finish. So based on that, the effective completion rate is about 71%. I cannot adjust the average time spent because I don't know the split of numbers there. So the recorded average time spent on the survey was about 5 minutes. And this is very important because I think if we are tomorrow creating another survey, we would surely want to look at if this is something that is that people are not happy with. I could sense some of the questions at the end did not have answers because people might have fatigued out on replying to very detailed questions. So we had about 60.9% of users in the personality distribution. The first question was, what was Kubernetes personality, and how was what kind of Kubernetes personality do you represent? And the distribution was pretty tilted towards operator and cluster user, which I was happy, and which I used for most of my data to filter, and then some of the data that was relevant for every user, every personality, I used that. We still have to do a few more charts, but the user was 16.2% and the operator was around 44.7%. So that kind of makes it even more nicer, because I think I want more operator experience, because I'm talking about support cadence and they are mostly responsible for approving or performing the upgrades or performing the changes into the system. Based on the another question was what kind of Kubernetes version you're using in production, non-production, and what are you evaluating today? I ignored the evaluating and non-production for this particular presentation and focused on production to just see what people are using. Since this particular slide has a lot of colors, I thought, reduce the number of versions of Kubernetes probably. So I created another one that said, okay, we have less than 1.10 version of Kubernetes as blue, and then everything else has its own color. So you can see that about the green, which is 1.11 version of Kubernetes, is currently the most, or at least during the survey, was the highest used version of Kubernetes, and a large number of consumers were still on 1.10 version of Kubernetes, and still many consumers are still using even older version of Kubernetes, like I think 1.5 and 1.6 also had like 5 or 6 users and 10 users using a 1.8 or 1.9. But the interesting thing is the highest version used is 1.11, and followed is 1.12, and then after that is 1.10 in this particular diagram. So I'm focusing more on the operator, but if you see, the pattern follows, except for the distributor, where a lot of distributors are still supporting older versions of Kubernetes. Okay. So another question was about cluster semantics. We wanted to understand what kind of clusters people were using. The question was, what's your cluster size? And the maximum group of clusters size was about 2 to 5 clusters. Most of the respondents had 2 to 5 clusters, and I filtered them by operator and user rather than vendor and distributor, so that we get actually the usage of the right audience. The max average number of nodes was about 5 to 10 nodes. So at an average, we wanted to know the average, and we also wanted to know the max number of nodes in a cluster that users had. And it felt like the max number of nodes that category that users had was also 5 to 10. However, the second highest was more than 50 nodes, which is very interesting. About 52 respondents out of 209 operators had actually more than 50 nodes. If you combine this chart and this chart to see, okay, and just restrict yourself to operator and user and see what versions of Kubernetes are people using for large clusters, say 50 node clusters, because that is one of the hypotheses was large clusters may see it difficult or may take longer to upgrade. So maybe one of the reasons users want to have a longer cadence is because they want to make sure they use, it takes a lot of time to upgrade a large cluster, say. Looking at this data, a large number of large clusters are still older version of Kubernetes. If I say 1.10 and less, which is orange and the blue, green is 1.11 again, and red is 1.12. And a good sign is that about 20 to 30% of the users were on 1.12 and are moving towards 1.13. But the same pattern that we saw in the earlier picture, where green and the red and the orange are the highest, and then the culmination of the older releases is the next. So this kind of shows that people are sticking to older releases and moving slowly for larger clusters, but ultimately they are going to 1.12 and they are moving. So in this block, 1.12 is actually the highest. We wanted to ask, okay, if you're upgrading at this pace, what do you prefer? Do you prefer what is the frequency of preference for upgrades? And we got a large number of people said they like the quarterly upgrades. The next highest was twice per year, and then less than quarterly and once per year. So once per year and then less than quarterly. About 15% wanted once per year, and about 43 or 42% wanted 42.9% wanted quarterly. They preferred, at least. They preferred patch release upgrades. When do you want to actually upgrade patch? Do you want a cycle, or do you want to do it when there is a reason? So most of the patch releases, most of the consumers were optimistic, saying they wanted to do it when there is patch release or whenever there is a bug fix release. However, if you look at the actual data of what versions they are using right now, was very what version of Kubernetes they are using right now, both this data of what they prefer and what they in both patch release and minor releases does not match. So they are unable to do it versus what they are willing to do. And I think that is more to do with the excitement of using Kubernetes versus I don't think Kubernetes is boring yet. But Kubernetes is still the coolest thing in the ecosystem of whatever is running on Kubernetes. So upgrading Kubernetes is still people are still wanting to upgrade Kubernetes as frequently. What is the preferred patch release upgrades every patch release? So what are the challenges? The question category now falls into what are the challenges that users are facing for upgrades, and we divided that into technical and non-technical blockers in the question. The technical blockers, I'm not able to see anybody's video, so if you're raising your hand or if you're wanting to ask a question, you probably should interrupt me in the middle. So the non-technical blockers, the biggest one was getting approval for the change to be submitted, which is interesting, which is expected actually. And then the second one was the unfamiliarity with the changes that are going in. The description of this unfamiliarity with the changes was that you don't know what's going in and you don't have time to figure it out. So the amount of changes that are going in, and to not know the breadth of Kubernetes and then not understand, hey, if I upgrade, what would happen? That's one of the technical blockers. And getting approval. So if you look at the questions, when you ask them a question of what's blocking you, you can clearly see the second highest here is unfamiliarity with the changes. It kind of says that if you're moving too fast, it's difficult for me to catch up. And the right question actually gives out the right behavior there. I mean, that's still the second highest and not the top. The topmost is the process itself of getting an approval to push something in. The technical challenges, the biggest one was the risk of upgrade related issues. If you upgrade, you have a risk. I think this is more of a fear rather than reality in terms of, I mean, that's an assumption. I probably should not mention it here. And the second highest is time and difficulty of testing the services running on Kubernetes. So if you had ingress objects and your own CRDs or your own admission controllers, etc., stuff that is already hooking into Kubernetes, you would have issues testing your compatibility with the new versions, and that is what is represented in these two questions. The third one was a tie between time required to roll out and the Kubernetes plugins, etc. The changes that are happening in that are either third party, like say OVA, or any CRDs that you download or Helm charts that you download. So I don't have a summary for this, but I have quite a feeling that though the users, one thing I need to do over on this chart is I need to add number of responses here as to how many people actually mentioned, because the percentages are not always exactly representative of a problem, because if it's a very low number itself, then the percentage does not matter, because percentages are taken from the total number of responses for this question. So I'll take a look at that and probably mention that here. But one of the gut feelings was the process was blocked. The inhibition and the process itself is blocking us from blocking the consumers from doing upgrades. Technical blockers. So what is the upgrade strategy? Okay, this is okay. So I have more slides and more charts that I need to do, and those are still under to do. Anybody has any questions for existing slides, please shoot back. If you have any suggestions on if you have any questions on any charts or any suggestions on what kind of charts I should do, please shoot back. The floor is open.
I think it's really good to see some of the results, particularly how much the risk of upgrade related issues is people's #1 technical concern. I mean, that kind of matches with my experience as well. But I think there's a couple of things there that remind me of discussions we've had previously. One of which is being unfamiliar with the changes, non-technical blocker. That's the sort of thing where some of the stuff that we've talked about before, I think Jordan, you suggested it, about making the change logs, having a machine parsable version of the change logs that would let people slice by what they cared about, might help with that. It's really, it's good to sort of see I feel like that's the exact sort of thing that we wanted out of this, to be like, here's all the things that we've talked about, and to get a feeling for which things that we've talked about are going to sort of move the needle on some of these results.
Yep, I agree. And I think there was, in general, I think there was a question last time by Dims about what kind of, do you see clusters of users and clusters of perceptions or clusters of belief systems? Like you mentioned in OpenStack, he had like 2 groups, and he expected more groups or more clusters of, if I create a scatter graph. I think I found only 2, but I think it would be much better when I share the data and these graphs with everyone when I make it. I've seen all the data. It's just that sometimes, putting that in a chart and much more identifiable way, and make sure that it is actually meaningful data versus biased data. That's what I'm trying to avoid. Avoid bias in the data and avoid bias in the question itself. Because I don't want to ask wrong questions when I'm making the chart itself. There was a definition of upgrades, which was one of the important questions. I thought I had added the chart for, but it's not here, which I'm clear was the people. I'll probably add the chart and then probably speak about it.
I feel like the other thing that feels useful would be to take some of the sort of do the later numbers that you've done about like concerns about upgrades and stuff like that and slice them. It feels like the large cluster, non-large cluster divide feels important. Given that there's, when you said about the numbers for the cluster size, there were sort of two, there was like 5 to 10 or greater than 50. That feels like a pretty big difference in cluster size.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
that has a big impact on like whether or not people upgrade.
Yeah. Also maybe slicing the big clusters who are currently on 113. Like I'm interested in what they see as blockers to upgrade, but they're actually doing pretty good. So
yeah,
I would like to see the big clusters that are like on 110, 111.
Yep.
What those particular respondents answered as blockers to upgrade. It'd be neat to kind of explode those out to see why are those lagging behind.
Yeah. So a couple of comments. One of which I had said back when we put it together, which is that I'd really love to know what the spread in greater than 50 looks like. Because when you're publishing a theoretic theoretical 5,000 node max, greater than 50 covers a lot of territory.
Yeah, I think so. The initial expectation was not that we will have that many greater than 50 clusters. And if you look at the other data that actually
yeah, but I know, for example, that I've gotten RFPs for 1,000 to 2,000 nodes, some of which were pool of clusters, but some of which really wanted a 1,000 node cluster. So that's one thing that we can't really go back and deal with. The other thing is, we don't want to bias the data, but there's one bias that's automatically in the data, which is, this is going to sound a little weird, but by surveying current users, in a lot of ways, we're getting the audience that is less likely to want long-term support than the audience we can't touch, who are the who are in the long tail. A lot of our customers are, let's look at the other side. Our Linux customers in some cases have 13 years of support. I mean, they have to pay insanely for those years as you go out the curve. And a lot of those people are going to be, will someday be forced to it, because anything they want to do will be coming in containers. So they're going to have to deal with it. And, by suiting it's not quite early adopter, but it's certainly a tech current user pool. There's a bias built into that.
I agree there, but I think the audience that we had was mostly, so I think the biggest audience we had was Kubernetes dev community and the CNCF user community. And we got really big boosts when CNCF retweeted us and retweeted the survey, and initially when we published the Kubernetes dev. So I think we got really big boost there to reach out to possible adoption user group. That means, I think Josh once had suggested we should probably reach out to our companies. I did reach out and we did forward the surveys, but I don't think there was any bump so I did reach out to VMware and my company, my employer, and see if we can send it to our user community. And we did send it out, but I don't think there was any bump there. But I think we should probably more push there to get adopters because I don't think the CNCF has an adopter community, and the project itself does not have an adopter community. Yeah. Did we note down the suggestions? If you made a suggestion on what kind of slice you want to do, please
I think I got all
in the notes.
But if I missed anyone's suggestion, please.
Yeah, it's important that we cover all the data that we have collected in the notes and in the charts. And I'm going to create a summary on what my observations are based on the data I already have, because I've seen it, but to represent it in SurveyMonkey does not help with all of that, and Excel sheets are not as good. So I'm actually writing tools and my own charts.
Will the raw data get published along with the charts and stuff?
Yes, I'm sure the data belongs to the community.
Right.
So it should be with everyone. Yeah.
I think obviously we just need to be careful to make sure we identify it as far as possible.
Yeah, I think I have received. I mean, all the leads have received the emails with the information. CNCF has the data, and we have the data, so anybody can.
Mostly, I just don't want to make you make all the charts. I want to make charts myself without having to bug you. So.
I agree with that, but I think you're doing. I mean, I'm doing this, so it's better to I have built I've built my data models and etc. stuff already, so it should be good. If anybody else wants to play with the data also is fine. More charts are better, more perspectives are actually better. Especially when we have a good amount of data. I was also recommending that to SIG PM to say, okay, if you can see something on this that you need, we should probably mine more and let us know. But yeah, I'm working on this charts. If anybody has any suggestions, please feel free to suggest, saying, okay, probably this kind of chart dice the data this way, and I'll probably make another chart on that. Okay, I'm not sure how much we're doing with time.
We're almost out of time, Double. I think, what's the best way for people to suggest more charts?
On the notes, you can add your, to this section, you can add subsections and assign them to me. And you can also comment on the slides if I share them, if I find a way to share them.
I think right now they're not shared. Yeah, let's say they're not shared with.
Let me just share with everybody. Don't want to notify anyone yet. There, my personal account, and only comment right now. Yeah, so they should be shared now with everyone who is in Kubernetes Dev. And if anybody has any comments, please feel free to mention there. The second slide is a picture, second and third one, because I copy pasted them from PowerPoint and they seem to only come off as screenshots. That's it. I think I don't want to take more time. We should end the meeting and move to the next one. Thank you, everyone. I'll follow up on the notes and other assignments.
And yeah, just before we all go, everyone could just make sure that I've done my best to sort of note down everyone who attended wherever I could. If you could please make sure that all of your details are correct. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Thanks.